We got down, kept our heads up, we came back. And that's how we have to do it, you guys. That's the most important thing, learning how to come back, right?
When people ask me where I'm from, I tell them the cowboy capital of the world, Oakdale, California. It's hardly a dent on the map. It's a place where cattle still graze in green pastures, cowboys walk with pride, and lifted trucks dominate the roads. Oakdale lies on the eastern part of the Central Valley, right under the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, with the Stanislaus River running right under it. With agriculture and ranching as the main source of Oakdale's economy, one might label it a hick town, downtrodden with tobacco-chewing, gun-clinging good old boys. You wouldn't be entirely mistaken, but let's not get stereotypical here. Oakdale is the setting for the story of my life, the story that shaped me into who I am today. My story involves a baseball team, a group of boys bound together through a 10-year journey, guided by a mentor and molded by tragedy. It's a story that started as one man's mission to develop a group of boys into a team of ball players, a journey that came full circle years after it begun under the lights in late May. For those that lived it, they'll always remember, and for those that looked on from the stands, it's surely hard to forget.
Hi, I'm Erickson Dickens, and I'll be taking you on a journey exploring the beginning, middle, and end of my childhood baseball team, the Oakdale Colts. But to fully do the story the justice it deserves, I feel it's necessary to provide ample background long before the Colts were even an idea. So let me take you back to a place even smaller than Oakdale, to where my story really begins.
My dad, Mark Allen Dickens, was born on April 29, 1963. He was raised in Valley Home, a small rural suburb 10 minutes outside of Oakdale.
He was very, very, very active. Always had a smile on his face, and all the pictures he had where his mouth was wide open. He always had a ball, and then when Brian and the other boys came along, grew up, then they were always playing ball and hitting it out on the front lawn.
Old man, look at my life, 24 and there's so much more.
Basically, Mark did just, at least for me, I watched him because I idolized him.
We did everything together. I mean, we hunted together, we fished together, rode bikes.
Played backyard baseball.
My dad learned at a young age the importance of having a strong work ethic, having to do chores on his father's Jersey cow ranch before the sun rose and after school when the sun went down. But ranching wasn't what my dad envisioned for his future. It wasn't what he was passionate about. What my dad loved doing above all else was playing baseball.
Mark knew everything about the game, the baseball. He studied it.
He loved it.
He loved read books, had books on it. You asked him any question about baseball and he knew it.
Mark loved collecting baseball cards and playing a heck of a shortstop.
He really enjoyed baseball. He always would get ready to pitch, and then he'd kind of turn and he'd always pull his pants from the back.
My dad played shortstop and pitched for the Valley Home Little League team, a team that played the Oakdale youth team during season, and this is when my dad first met future coaching partner Steve Wyckoff.
Mark and I actually played against each other in Little League. The dreaded Valley Home team that us Oakdale kids used to absolutely...
Why is that? Because we were good?
Because your team was stacked.
It was also growing up in Valley Home where he met lifelong friend and future coaching partner Richard Garza.
First time I met Mark, I was a kid who moved right next door to Mark at age 13. The summers we would spend playing wiffle ball, tape wiffle ball, wood tape a wiffle ball, and then play in their front yard.
Since Valley Home didn't have a high school, all the kids went to Oakdale High, the home of the Mustangs. In high school, my dad's love of baseball and sports in general increased. He was a three-sport athlete playing football, wrestling, and of course baseball, where he still carried out his role as a pitcher and a shortstop.
He was outstanding athlete.
He was good at everything he did. Everything he did was he was like following.
We idolized him.
Yeah.
His senior year, my dad received all-league honors in the Valley Oak League as a utility player, batting .342. Upon graduating from Oakdale High in 1981, my dad had the opportunity to play baseball at Delta College, but because of enrollment complications, my dad decided to enroll at Modesto Junior College and hang up his bat and glove. In the late 80s, he enrolled at Cal State Stanislaus as a liberal studies major. It was during these years when he realized his calling in life was to help others in the classroom. It was also at Stanislaus State where he met his wife, my mom, Mila Amarine.
I met Mark in 1988 at Stanislaus State through a mutual friend, and Mark was really cute and had some great eyes and a very soft spirit. I would periodically see him on campus, and he was painfully shy, and so we didn't talk, but we would see each other and get a glimpse, and I'd run home and tell my sister that I got to see that really cute guy on campus.
The two met in April of 1988 and were engaged 8 months later. From there, my dad joined the Army National Guard Reserves and excelled, becoming a staff sergeant whose specialty was chemical warfare and hot fueling helicopters. In 1989, my dad became the first member of his family to receive a bachelor's degree, and in 1990 his teaching credentials. It was also in July of 1990 when he married Mila. A year later, my dad became a first grade teacher at Fairview Elementary School in Southside Modesto. In 1994, my mom became pregnant with me, and my dad was honorably discharged from the military. Shortly after, he became a math teacher and later a vice principal at Hanshaw Middle School. On April 7, 1995, I was born, and then 18 months later, my brother Soren was born in December of '96. Of course, as my brother and I got older, we were introduced to the game of baseball, spending hours in the front lawn with my dad hitting balls off the tee.
Mark played baseball growing up and had a real love for the game, and then he had two boys, and that was the platform for him to coach. And when Erickson was 18 months old, I remember one evening he and Mark playing baseball in the front yard, and Erickson hit the ball out of the front yard into the pasture, and I think a coach was born on that day.
When I was old enough, my dad got involved in OBA, that is Oakdale Baseball Association, so he could be my coach.
Mark loved coach. He loved the kids. He loved to teach. He wanted the kids to love the game of baseball. He was always studying new ways, techniques of making kids better.
Because of my dad's dedication to teaching me the fundamentals of baseball at a young age, I became a finely tuned player. By coach pitch, I was surpassing other players, and a lack of competition was becoming prevalent. It was around this time when my dad started throwing around the idea about starting a competitive travel ball team with himself as the head coach. He was convinced that if we wanted to excel later on at the high school level, we had to start young and we had to see elite competition.
He had a strong desire to skillfully develop good ball players to feed into Oakdale High. And I think the fact that he had two boys and he had a dream of coaching at Oakdale High motivated him to coach.
My dad even spoke with the head varsity baseball coach, Hondo Arpoca, and the two of them discussed the fundamental traits and attributes needed for a player to be successful at Oakdale High.
Mark approached me about creating a youth program, the Colts, and making a foundation for kids coming into high school built on what we were already doing. So we had a few talks about it, and we talked about coaching and how to implement some of the systems.
One man whose son was facing the same problem of finding solid competition was fellow OBA coach Steve Wyckoff.
Throughout playing in the OBA league, we were running into trouble with the fact that we were having to allow our kids to play up and to play with kids a whole lot older just to find legit competition for them.
It was him who my dad first approached with his vision.
After Mark got off work, he called and asked me if he could stop by, and we started kicking things around about how we might want to go ahead and get the kids ready for the next step in baseball, and one thing led to another.
Steve Wyckoff agreed with my dad's pitch, and after talking to his son Robbie, agreed to come on board.
Even especially back then, he probably had one of the best gloves on the team. I mean, he would pretty much scoop everything up.
Best smarts for the game. He always knew where to be.
He worked so hard. He wasn't very fast. It's like his dad over here. But he did well with the tools that he got, and I was very proud of him.
With Steve and Robbie Wyckoff on board, my father then approached his childhood friend Richard Garza to see if he would be interested in coaching and having his son Nick play on the team.
Me and Mark always used to talk. I used to coach with Mark, and we'd always talk about it. And I was just lucky to be with Mark at the time, and he brought me along, and I really appreciate that.
I had known Nick the best, considering his dad and my dad had coached together for a couple seasons of coach pitch, so naturally I was thrilled to find out Nick was going to be a part of this travel team.
Nick was kind of as the catcher of the team, he was stuck in that position. He wasn't necessarily a catcher to begin with, but we needed a catcher. Nick took on that challenge and it worked incredibly hard at it, and he became a leader of the team.
He was actually the only player on the team who could probably play all 9 positions. I mean, he could play shortstop, play third, definitely could play catcher. He turned out to be a great catcher.
All in all, I think, the team doesn't get to where we were without Nick. Core piece to the team.
Now with 3 coaches on staff, my dad felt it was necessary to add one more, and this was Manuel Machado. During coach pitch, we played against the team Manuel coached for his son Eddie, who would be the 4th addition to the team.
Eddie Machado. He was almost like the clown. Almost, was he like his dad or what?
He was definitely the clown. When the moment got a little bit tense, it always seemed that Eddie would lighten the moment up.
Hey. He had a heart of gold, and he played like no other. Let's put it that way. That kid was nails.
He was always a gamer. The moment was really never too big for Eddie.
I remember asking my dad what our team name would be. He said the Oakdale Colts, because Colts were young Mustangs, and the Mustangs were the mascot for Oakdale High, our final destination.
It takes a lot of grit, I think, to be a Mustang. You got to be tough. You're put through a grind, and sometimes it's more than others expect.
By 2004, the Oakdale Colts became a legit nonprofit organization and just on the verge of taking off as strictly a travel ball team. My dad and the other coaches felt it was important to build the foundation for the team with Oakdale kids, so in order to take off, we needed to find a few more core players. An obvious choice for the Colts was Nick Ippolito.
Nick Ippolito is one of those kids that he led by example. He was always in the game. He always knew what was going on. Solid ball player and more solid of a person.
Nick was fundamentally one of the best players we had. He knew everything about baseball. Seeing him away from the coaches and with his buddies, he was funny.
He was kind of like the funny guy on the team besides being a good player.
After Nick Ippolito, my dad had his eyes on one more player whom he felt was essential to the team. This was Andy Morris, who had played with us both on All-Star teams and OBA teams in previous years.
He was emotional.
I think he had a passion for the game that made him that way.
I would say that overall, Andy probably had the most God-given talent on the team. He had the size, he had the speed, he had the strength.
Back in the day, he was probably one of our best pitchers, very competitive.
According to records, the Oakdale Colts formally began operations in the summer of 2005 and was organized to allow boys from our area to play competitive baseball, provide them with the opportunity to learn the fundamentals in the sport, and to enhance their enjoyment of the activity.
It was Coach Mark. He actually said that he He was trying to get the kids to go as far as he can take them, like start, when they're younger, and then go to high school, and after that, see how far they can go in college. From there and go forth, so.
Now, every great story has a call to action, a crossing of the threshold into the hero's journey. Our call to action that opened the door to the Colts occurred in July 2005. Sanctions.
Sanctions was kind of the segue into travel ball. Oakdale All-Stars kind of brought in those good players, and I think that's just where it started.
Oakdale won the bid to host Sanctions in 2005, the tournament between the all-star teams of the local Little League organizations. We were 10 years old at the time, with my dad, Steve, Richard, and Manuel as our coaches. Oakdale and Belpasse were longtime rivals, with Belpasse accustomed to winning this tournament as they were much like a baseball monopoly at the time in our area.
At that time, no one beat Belpasse. They were the best team all around in this area.
Losing to Belpasse was a thing that was something that happened on a regular basis. We worked real hard to get these kids ready for that particular tournament.
The tournament was double elimination, and we started off good, winning our first couple games against Ripon and Ceres. Then we played Belpasse. We were both undefeated in the tournament at this point, and Belpasse pitched their ace, Trey Ridenhour.
At the time, Belpasse had the best pitcher in California, in my opinion, and Trey Ridenhour. He was probably a 6-foot lefty at 12 years old. He threw just absolute gas.
That game, he ended up having 9 strikeouts against us, only giving up 4 hits, one of them being a home run by Spencer Thomas.
Still to this day, I have this picture of me and your dad, Mark, fist bumping as I'm rounding third base.
They ended up beating us 9-4, putting us 1 loss away from elimination. But we had worked too hard to get to this point, and our coaches weren't going to let us lose hope.
I remember Manuel Machado. He said, guys, we just need to look at it as a piece of pie. You take one slice at a time, and if you do that, we could get far.
It must have worked too, because we bounced back the next day, beating Modesto 25-0, then Ripon 12-3. We rallied and rose to the challenge, and there we were again, facing off against not only Belpasse, but Trey Ridenhour.
This couldn't be a better matchup. This is what you live for. This is what you play baseball for.
We had to beat him twice that day for the championship, and that was kind of a really big moment for us.
We came out fighting. I hit a home run against Ridenhour in the first inning, followed by a plethora of hits. Spencer Thomas and Nick Ippolito split time on the mound, keeping them at 5 runs while we surpassed them with 7. Now it came down to single elimination for both teams. Nick Ippolito started off the game pitching for an inning and then was replaced by Eddie Machado, who dealt for 5 innings. We ended up winning 9-1, and you can imagine how ecstatic everyone was. We dogpiled the mound, and my dad got an ice chest dumped on his head.
We finished that pie and we won. And that's got to be one of my favorite memories as a Colt.
To be able to beat him twice was kind of a really big deal for us.
To finally break through and win that tournament stands out head and shoulders above anything else that team ever did.
Beating him on this level, going to district, I think that was pure joy. And just to see the happiness on the kids' faces and the joy, it was just like the pinnacle. And it was just the start. It was just the start.
I think the most rewarding thing is the fact that we started something here in town. Travel ball was something that was just starting back in those days. Definitely. And we kind of hit the cusp of it to start getting our kids involved in it at that point. And as Manuel mentioned, the fact that we had a good little nucleus here in Oakdale.
Out of the 11 players on the All-Star team, 9 were merged into Colts. As the season progressed, we picked up 2 new players, Anthony Bachoco from Ripon and Brad Wilkerson from Salida.
Becoming a Colt impacted my life in a huge way. Like I said before, I met a lot of great people. I met all the great coaches that all made a big influence in my life. Made me kind of who I am today.
Now officially a travel ball team representing Oakdale, we were held to an even higher standard. This meant we had to perform at a higher caliber of play, which would naturally require practice.
Coach Mark was an awesome guy to play under. He was always ready for practices. He did his research, put in the time, figuring out and understanding baseball and how it should be played and how we could play it better.
He was the most prepared coach you'd ever be around. He'd always show up with his little 3x5 cards, and he'd have jobs for us as all throughout our coaching days together.
Mark took a lot of time to plan the practices, and all of the men that helped coach were serious about getting work done, and yet somehow made it really fun for the boys.
The majority of our practices were held out in Valley Home at the junior high, where there were 3 rundown fields we utilized as our home fields.
My dad actually grew up in Valley Home, and so did Erickson's. Our dads would both take us out there, and we would practice together sometimes. It felt like at home, the team, and for us.
It's our sandlot, it's our field, I feel like.
It was a second home for most guys on the team. Some of the guys even lived out there. When we first started out there, the biggest goal was to, hit it over the fence. And I'll never forget it, the day we got bigger and stronger and older and we finally hit a home run, and that's all we wanted to do.
Always making up stupid games where you're shagging balls. Dive for a ball and you get like 2 points or something like that. No one ever really kept score.
We became a family, brothers mentored by fathers who sought to bring the best out of us. We felt not only confident in one another, but also comfortable.
We played together for so long, we just clicked as one big player. That's what made the Colts. We were just one unit.
We traveled all over the state competing in tournaments, from the Central Valley to the Bay Area, the mountains, and even Southern California.
Being a parent on the Colts was life-changing. When we started traveling a lot and doing all these tournaments, it was like family. Truly, it became family.
As a whole unit, we were all one big family. I didn't worry about my kids when they were with anybody that was on the Colts. They could go in other rooms, hotel rooms, and I didn't worry about them.
Dude, the hotels were crazy. In a 4 or 5 floor hotel, and we're just playing tag and hide and seek on every floor.
We kind of had the freedom to do whatever we wanted. We would just leave our parents, and run around.
Just pick on my little brother and Trey Morris all the time.
Somehow, at some point, you knew Trey was going to get beat up.
We all love the guy, but we also liked getting him mad because it was just funny seeing him get all angry.
Trey was a champ. I think he enjoyed it though. Obviously he didn't like little kids picking on him, but I think he enjoyed just the sense of team camaraderie that he was involved with.
Being on the Colts for all those years was like being in a bubble. It was a utopia, kind of a separation from the reality of daily living.
We were able to be with the boys from the time they were about 6 until they were 13, so we really spent a lot of years together.
As far as those years go, I don't know, you can't put words to it. It was probably the most rewarding, it was probably the most fun I've had in life.
The Colts began to gain a reputation as not only a highly competitive program, but also a program whose players played with class.
I remember Coach Mark used to always say, either win with class, lose with class, play with class. It really showed us respect, and to respect our opponents.
The coaches always drilled into us that we needed to be gracious.
They were teachers, they were parents, they had jobs, they had lives, they had everything else going on, but yet they still found time to give us what we needed. And looking back now, couldn't have been more thankful for them.
I really felt that being an Oakdale Colt meant that our coaching would be quality. I know that Mark and the other guys, the other 3, were always gentlemen. They were really good examples.
Mark understood and had a philosophy of baseball that I love, which was you're going to fail most of the time, and that's okay. A lot of times you're not going to get the call. Baseball will break your heart. And so Mark taught the boys not to blame people, not to blame each other ever. They were always a unit.
Our first season, we actually won over 75% of our games. We were earning respect from the teams we play and the coaches who coached against us.
We just were able to win tournaments with a lot of our local kids, and people to ask about where's Oakdale at when we'd be at these tournaments, and we'd explain to them that it's just a little town down down in the Central Valley, and they were kind of impressed that all of our kids were from Oakdale at that point.
To be a Colt, it meant a lot. It meant something. Coming from a small town, I mean, it was very rare to have a travel ball team with everybody in the same town. You know, we were the local guys, and, you know, we made a run for it.
We may have played big, but in reality, we were a very undersized team physically. We were known as those scrappy ball players who battled, who did the little things right, and were able to capitalize on other teams' mistakes.
The way that the coaches worked with us, helped us practice and stuff, translated well to competition and playing against these guys that on paper, or when you look at us, we shouldn't beat, but we were able to consistently. We weren't intimidated by anybody.
I think Mark was what a coach should be, especially at that age. I feel like he said what needed to be said, when it needed to be said. I feel like he was never out of line. I really just think he did a good job of keeping the players in check and making sure we had fun, all while, you know, getting the job done while winning games. It was perfect.
Coach Mark did a very good job of showing us the right technique, right form, and also he implemented on hard work and doing all the little things.
All the coaches from the Colts taught me, and I'm sure all the other guys, a lot of things, whether it be about baseball or life.
So you've heard me say a few times now how the Colts had a reputation for excellence on the field. One of our most memorable tournaments was in our backyard in Turlock at Pedretti Park.
It was extremely hot. I think it was like 110 or 112 degrees, something like that.
All I could think about was how hot it was when I was playing. Might have been 120.
I mean, we had misters, we had ice packs, we had wet towels. I mean, we had guys calling time to go drink water out in the outfield. It was just a complete gritty grind.
After the first 2 games, we were 4-0, playing good baseball but slowly growing weary from the looming heat. On the 3rd day, we entered the championship game against another undefeated team, the NorCal Sting from the Bay Area. Led by a stellar pitching performance by Eddie Machado, we went ahead in the 5th inning after a close 0-0 ball game. In the 6th inning, the other team managed to get the bases loaded on us, and just when things seemed to be slipping out of our hands, we gave the ball to our clutch guy, Nick Ippolito, who came in and closed it out on the mound, giving us a 6-4 victory.
Even though it was so hot, we still found a way to win. We won that game, we won the tournament. And I think that showed a lot because of how tough we are as a team.
When we won that tournament, it was unlike any experience you could imagine. Nobody would back down, nobody settled, nobody wanted to lose. It could have been 140 degrees and you'd still find the 9 of us on that field pushing and fighting to win that ball game.
Since March, we had played in 9 tournaments, taking first place 5 times and had 2 second place finishes. One of those tournaments of which we won was the Super Series State Championships at Rainbow Fields in Riverbank, California. Tahoe was another Colts tournament that stands out to me.
Tahoe, I think, was our first wood bat tournament. It was a lot of fun because, you know, when we weren't playing, we all got to go down to the beach together and we were all hanging out, and it was just, I don't know, it was just a lot of fun.
Everybody was kind of completely out of their norm up there. I mean, it was almost like a vacation, really a vacation. We've talked about how you guys look so little compared to the other teams that were playing, and I don't know, there was a lot of pride in that tournament for everybody involved.
We ended up making it to the championship game, but lost by 1 run, but not without putting up one hell of a fight against kids much bigger and stronger than us. Arizona was the furthest place we traveled that season.
Between hotels and hot games and being Christmas time, and it was just a different atmosphere than most places that we played.
We ended up doing decent, getting knocked out before the semifinals, but winning 3 games, tying 1, and losing 2. As far as the lineup went, changes were made periodically, but it stayed pretty consistent. Nick Ippolito led off the order and played shortstop if he wasn't pitching, and to this day, I've never played with or against a more athletic infielder than him.
Nick Ip, you know, he was our leadoff hitter. He was very consistent. He always got on base.
He was the smoothest fielder, and he could always make something happen on the base path by stealing.
He was always the stud. He had a great glove. The defense was there. He'd pitch. Always a solid player all around.
My dad was always so impressed with Nick Ippolito for being such a stud despite his slight stature.
He'd always tell me dynamite comes in small packages, and I believed it, and I still believe it. And I played like I was 6 feet tall, and he made me feel good about myself.
And of course, Nick Ippolito was always there to put a smile on your face.
He would always be joking around, singing songs and doing little dances.
That guy always had something to say, and no matter what came out of his mouth, it was hilarious. His imagination's crazy.
Funniest guy on the team. Actually did a commercial when he was a child. He's always flexing, always wanting to take his shirt off.
He was the funniest kid of them all. He could impersonate people, his dances, all the songs he made up. I mean, that kid, he's a character.
Batting second in the lineup and playing center field or pitching was Eddie Machado, our only lefty on the team.
I'd say that Eddie Machado was probably one of my best friends on the team. He always was diving for balls, making good plays.
Always had that positive attitude about him that no matter what the score was or anything, that we always could come back and win.
He was a great number 2 hitter. I think I batted first, batted second. Good 1-2 punch.
Eddie Machado is undoubtedly one of my best friends for life. The kid always had a smile on his face.
Watching Eddie grow up and seeing how he, of course, developed to the player that he is today and the man he is today was very neat. Whatever I learned, I always try to translate it to him, and because as an older brother, I just wanted to make sure that he was always prepared and always ready.
In the third hole was myself, playing second base and then later on first base.
Erickson was our ace at that time as young Colts. He was our big hitter. He was our power hitter. We always knew we had a chance. If we were down by 1, if we had Erickson coming up, we had a chance.
He carried the team at times. He played, at first base, honestly. You knew when the ball was hit that way, he was going to get it.
Erickson was a key, integral part of the Colts team as a pitcher. One of my memories of Coach Mark was when Erickson was on the mound, because his intensity went up a notch every time Erickson threw a pitch.
He helped him pitch.
Every pitch.
He would move that shoulder right
every pitch. As Erickson threw the ball, Mark would throw it with him, and to this day, that's just one fond memory of the whole thing.
Normally, the cleanup spot went to Spencer Thomas while he was on the Colts. He was one of those God-gifted all-around athletes that can play any position in any sport for that matter. Spencer had the most home runs with the Colts and batted .315. After the 4 spot came either Andy Morris or Nick Garza. If he wasn't pitching, Andy would be likely on third base. If there was ever a kid who embodied the backyard boy, get dirty persona, it was Andy.
He was one of my best friends back at the Colts. He was the most pound for pound raw baseball player, skill set and everything.
Andy was a really good player, very naturally gifted among us.
Andy Morris, great pitcher, wicked curveball, can pull an inside pitch like no other.
He always brought his A game every time he had to throw, and he was never afraid of any competition.
Overall, if the one thing that held Andy back, I think, throughout the years from being all Andy could be was Andy.
When he, showed his emotions on the field.
Man, every time he struck out, never seen that man so poopy in his life.
He's very passionate, but he was a gamer. He played all out. He played 110%. He put everything on the field.
Behind the dish was Nick Garza almost every game. He was indeed certainly a grinder, an absolute workhorse.
Nick Garza was just one of those guys that you could always count on. He always took charge back there behind the plate. He was very scrappy as a player.
He wasn't the biggest catcher, but he was so tough and he wanted to hold on to the ball. And he'd always show the ball up in the air. And I just admire him because he was such a tough competitor.
Nick Garza, he was the leader behind the plate that the catcher usually becomes.
Garza caught almost every game. Bulldog back there. Very, very, very tough kid mentally and physically. He didn't take any shit from anybody.
At second base, shortstop, or first base, you'd find Robbie Wyckoff. Robbie was probably the smartest player on the team and understood the game in depth.
The guy's an absolute genius, super smart kid. I went to school with him my entire life.
Robbie was he was a smart baseball player. He knew the game really well. You could just count on him to not make mental errors.
He was, back in the day, one of our strongest players. As the Colts started evolving and getting older, a lot of our players did surpass him.
He didn't quite mature at the same rate as some of the other kids, and so it made it real difficult to continue to keep up. I would say towards the end of the Colts, he had kind of fallen behind. It was tough for him at the end, but he loved the game. He loved the Colts. He loved being around the other kids.
The outfield was usually made up of Tanner Kent, Brad Wilkerson, Anthony Bachoco, and Jake Hastard. And of course, like every team, we had our bat boy, my brother Soren.
It was always a good time being the bat boy for the Colts. Just being around the older guys, being able to travel with them, whether it was out at Valley Home for practice, at someone's house hanging out, or if we were on the road. The family feel that the Colts gave off was more than a good experience. It was unique. It wasn't like any other team I had been on.
Those are the heroes. So in every great story, there has to be a villain, right? The arch nemesis. For the Colts, our rivals were the CCC Rockers.
We always knew it was going to be us and the Colts in the championship game, and we were going to have to battle it out.
We always look forward to playing the Rockers because of how intense it got. They played at a high level, we played at a high level.
Us and them were the best two local teams at the time.
During the games, there was no friends on the field, really. But I mean, after the game, when we saw each other, we'd always, give big hugs.
I'm totally surprised that we were as competitive as we were, but as friendly as we were afterward. No animosity. I mean, we play hard, and I'll tell you right now, we didn't want to lose to them. We didn't want to lose the Colts.
Definitely respected.
It was respectful baseball. It was really good.
My dad and Coach Jim also developed a mutual admiration for one another, despite their contrasting coaching styles.
Pernetti would always argue calls, and our coaches were the complete opposite.
There were times where I got thrown out or got crazy and stuff like that. He didn't laugh at me, he didn't nothing. He always had the same look, and he always shook my hand, and he always treated me with respect. I recall that he was calm. I recall that he was a strategist. I always had respect for him, coaching-wise, and as far as just a human being, because you could tell the relationships that he had with the kids were every bit the relationships that I had with the kids.
When the 2006 season came to an end, we had a few months off before starting up again. My dad had applied for a teaching position as a math teacher at Oakdale High prior to the season ending, which he was granted, as well as a freshman baseball coaching position.
Mark was just a great human being, a person with outstanding integrity. And, him coming on staff made our staff better. It was a no-brainer.
Being able to play for Coach Dickens for his only year coaching the high school was very neat because not only did we, of course, win league and everything, but just the coaching style that he entailed and learning how to be a man through him was astonishing. He wasn't that coach that yell or scream or anything like that. And now that I'm coaching the high school, I strive to be half the coach he was and have half the integrity he had as well.
It was during this break between the 2006 and 2007 season when talk about the future of the Colts started to arise, seeing that my dad now had two teams under his belt, with the coaching position at Oakdale High more time-consuming than he had anticipated. So after much ponder on the subject, my dad and the other coaches decided to coach the Colts for one more season, with our goal at the end to travel to Cooperstown, New York as our grand finale.
Going to Cooperstown and playing in that tournament was one of the biggest goals that we had.
That's what you play baseball for. That's every kid's dream, is to play in the tournament champions, Cooperstown.
Not only was it a huge tournament, but only the best could go to that tournament.
Cooperstown is a quaint village in Otsego County, New York, with a population of 2,000. It's home to the Baseball Hall of Fame and is quite literally a town built around baseball.
That was the biggest trip we've ever taken as a family, and that was the first time Andy been on a plane.
Being able to travel with the guys and play in that type of an atmosphere was pretty special.
When we finally got there, it was super exciting to see all the teams from around the country.
Cooperstown experience is literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You get to spend a week with your best friends, like playing baseball, doing the thing you love.
There were 96 teams total, and each team stayed in a large dorm with their teammates and their coaches.
I remember I had to sleep underneath Coach Mark, and I was very nervous for that because I am a kind of restless sleeper who kind of shakes the bed.
I really liked that the coaches stayed in the bunks with us. I thought that was really cool, and I think as a team it was a good bonding experience.
From eating in the clubhouse to playing wiffle ball right outside our dorm room.
I really liked trading pins with all the teams.
Trying to get the best pin, the one that lit up, the one that flashed.
Sometimes you had to trade extra pins along with it to get the cool one. And we would kind of brag about which ones we had.
When the tournament started, we lost the first 2 games, facing teams put together with kids from all over the country. We bounced back though, going on a 6-game winning streak, beating teams from Texas to Staten Island. I remember the pride I felt being on a team from such a small town competing at this level. Unfortunately, our streak ended and we were knocked out of the tournament after losing 8-4 to a team put together with players from all over the country called the U.S. Baseball Stars. I remember how sad it was after that loss because not only was Cooperstown over, so was the Oakdale Colts.
I think I cried. It was just a sad day because I knew all that fun that we had is done.
It was a really emotional time for all the Colts.
We had so many great memories together. So when it all ended, it was like, man, it's like the greatest times of my life are like, they're over.
The Oakdale Colts officially came to an end after Cooperstown, and as devastating as it was, the core group of us looked forward to not only playing for my dad again at Oakdale High when we were freshmen, but being able to play for 4 years together as Mustangs.
It wasn't even a minute that had passed when we closed the doors to say goodbye. I was already looking forward to high school. Coach Mark just got the freshman coaching job, and I was so excited to get to high school.
I feel like the Colts was a lead up for us as Mustangs.
Despite the fact the Colts had ended, things were going well. With high school approaching and my dad enjoying his new job at Oakdale, nobody had any reason to be pessimistic about anything. Unfortunately though, this optimistic outlook started to fade, and things would never be the same for any of us.
On February 8th, 2007, I got a phone call early in the morning from Oakdale High School. The secretary had called to tell me that Mark was in the office and that he didn't know where he was or who he was. And 24 hours later, we learned that Mark has a brain tumor. And there our journey began.
When I found out that Coach Mark was sick, it was heartbreaking, to say the least. He had become like family for, I think, everybody on the team.
It devastated me and broke my heart. I instantly thought of Erickson, Soren, and Mila.
Like, you never think someone so close to you and your family would get sick.
When I found out, I don't think I really understood how bad it would be. I think throughout time it kind of showed me, but you always hope for the best.
He never asked for anything. He just loved the game of baseball and wanted to see us kids happy and his family happy.
Your whole childhood growing up with all your friends, and then him being like a father figure to everybody, and it brought everybody closer together, but it was just a crappy way for it to happen.
Mark started radiation and chemotherapy shortly thereafter. Throughout it all, though, Mark was a fighter. He had a positive attitude. He never once said, "Why me?" He never, ever said that.
One night at our house, my dad became unresponsive. My mom called 911 and the ambulance came at 2 a.m. to pick up my dad.
He was metaflighted to UCSF. They were able to go in and take out the tumor in the parietal lobe. He was unable to walk. He couldn't talk. He lost every skill that he had. Fortunately, we had an amazing team of people that came daily to reteach Mark everything that he had lost. He exercised. He got up every day for therapy. He worked very, very hard to relearn algebra so he could get back in the classroom. He wanted to coach baseball again. He wanted to get out there. He wanted to be out there. And he tried. Around Thanksgiving, we were in the kitchen one evening and we were cooking, and I asked him to put something away in the refrigerator, and he said, "Where's that?" And I knew right then and there that things weren't good.
He was losing his speech again and his motor skills, and it was during this time when my dad realized he would not be around to watch my brother and I grow up.
Mark's number one concern was how that was going to affect him and his ability to watch his boys grow up long term.
You could see the twinkle in his eye when he was communicating about his sons. So he gave me a call, and the only thing he asked is, "Tony, what about my boys?"
From that time on, for the next couple of months, he just slowly declined, and then more rapidly towards the end.
On April 17th, 2009, just shy of his 46th birthday, my dad closed his eyes indefinitely in the presence of our entire family.
When we got married, the pastor said, "And two shall be one." And I never realized the extent of those words or the reality of that until half of that was gone.
It didn't seem real. It didn't seem like he could actually pass away, but he did.
I actually happened to be here the day that he did pass. I was in the driveway. I couldn't even get out of my car.
Realizing that someone that was such an influence in your life was gone, it's just hard.
I mean, the greatest thing that he has done is that his message of baseball in life is still going on.
I feel blessed to have known him. I feel blessed to have coached against him. And I'm not kidding. He made a big impact in the way I coach and what I do and how I respect other coaches. And I know the kids remembered him. I remember his funeral.
I will bet you right now Mark is working with a new group of kids up in heaven.
When there was a good pitcher pitching, Coach Mark told me, "You can hit this guy. I know you can." And I did. I'll never forget you, Coach Mark. Love, play ready. During these years, Coach Mark became more than a coach to me. He became a close friend, a family member, and a man I looked up to.
We were a family. I know for the better part of 4 years I spent more time with this team than I did at home. Many days my phone would ring in the morning or early afternoon and it was Mark. "Hey Wyckoff, I just found this new drill online. I can't wait to try it at practice tonight." Our goal at the beginning of this venture was to get these kids ready for the next level. Under Mark's leadership, I believe in some small way that we have helped in the development of each of these boys into young men.
My dad wasn't very vocal. He was a very mild-mannered man, so I don't really remember many one-on-one father-son life lesson talks. The majority of his teachings were on the baseball field. To me, baseball and my dad were correlated. With my dad came baseball, and with baseball came my dad. And so when he passed away, the game of baseball, it just wasn't really the same. He gave us that foundation, hoping that he'd be able to watch us blossom, but he didn't get that chance. But what I'm thankful for is that he lived for 45 years, and for 14 of those years, I got to watch him do it. So I learned a lot in those years just watching him. I graduated from junior high 2 months after my dad passed away and would be going to Oakdale High the following fall. Unfortunately, there was more bad news. Nick Ippolito would be unable to attend Oakdale High because he was denied an inter-district transfer and instead would be attending Downey High in Modesto where his dad taught.
I was heartbroken because I wasn't allowed to get into Oakdale. I actually cried. I was really hoping to play for them because I played with the Oakdale Colts my whole life.
Robbie Wyckoff, Andy Morris, and Mark Ortiz were freshmen already, with myself, Eddie Machado, Nick Garza, and Spencer Thomas a year behind them. All the other Colts ended up going to high school in Modesto. In August of 2009, I stepped onto the legendary campus of Oakdale High as a freshman.
One of the uniqueness of Oakdale is we're still a one-school town, and that's special nowadays. There's so much tradition and history here. It's been around for many, many years, hundreds of years, and so many people that have gone to school here, and then their family continues to be born and raised here.
When I got into high school, it was difficult for me, not having my dad around anymore. On top of this, I had injured my arm the past year throwing a bullpen and wasn't even able to play. Our sophomore year, things improved. I had elbow surgery prior to the start of this year and was able to DH for the JV, with my arm almost back to normal. Eddie Machado was on JV with me, with Andy, Nick Garza, Spencer, and Mark on varsity. Robbie Wyckoff, however, a Colt since day one and one of the original 6, decided to leave baseball behind and pursue golf after his sophomore year.
It was actually one of the sadder days of my career when Robbie stepped back from playing baseball our sophomore year, junior year of high school.
I ended up making the change after my sophomore year. To my junior year, I decided to play golf. So there was kind of that difference from everybody else that I got to play and compete in baseball my first 2 years and then make that switch to golf later on.
My son didn't make it through 4 years of baseball in high school, so that was kind of a bummer when it all came about, but at the same time, I look back on it and I honestly probably wouldn't change one thing.
At the end of my sophomore season, Eddie and I got moved up to the varsity for playoffs, seeing the varsity had advanced to semis. Andy Morris was still tearing it up as a junior, starting at third base and pitching occasionally. Spencer Thomas and Mark Ortiz both started in the outfield and were both highly productive in the lineup, and Nick Garza, although easily able to compete at the varsity level, was second-string catcher behind junior Lane Branch. It was during this postseason when I felt the presence of the Colts again. Sure, it was different without guys like Robbie Wyckoff, Nick Ippolito, my dad, Richard, Steve, and Manuel, but it felt like we were living my dad's mission, and some of that camaraderie was back.
I feel like what happened with the Colts and the environment, what it fostered was togetherness, and it also reinforced selflessness through the teamwork and staying together like a family for a number of years. And having that accountability with people you trust. They were blessed with a lot of talent, but the character traits that came with that group were different than most groups that we coached, and probably set the example for the program as far as the type of men they were on and off the field.
Playing for the Colts for so many years prior and then into high school, you develop that passion for the game, and then you also develop that brotherly love. That was special about you guys.
We ended up beating Manteca for the section title that year, the first section title won with the core group of Colts on the team. Then junior season came about, and I got to fully experience what it meant to be an Oakdale High Mustang under Coach Hondo Arpoca. Along with Coach Arpoca were coaches Nate Gregory, our pitching coach, and Coach Joe Peterson, our hitting and outfield coach. Both of them, like Arpoca, had been established coaches at Oakdale for nearly a decade.
We expect a lot out of our athletes here. It's kind of like any phase in life or a job. The higher up you go, you're given more responsibilities. With more responsibilities, you're expected to produce a lot more.
Hondo Arpoca, the head coach at the time, We talked about grit and the selflessness, of course, and the accountability that came with the group. You were expected to give back to the program, not take from the program.
I started at first base my junior year, Andy Morris at short and on the mound, Eddie Machado playing some outfield and pitching here and there, Nick Garza still second string catcher, Spencer starting in left field, and Mark Ortiz in center. It was a lot of fun, but certainly a lot of work too.
There's a lot of expectations of you with Oakdale sports. We're a small town and everyone kind of goes to the games, everyone watches, and it's almost like we're mini superstars in a way.
So to be an Oakdale Mustang, it's tough. I mean, I'm sure not a lot of people can do it. Being in a small town, that atmosphere, you know, you don't have 5 or 6 schools in your city. It's also an amazing feeling to be an Oakdale Mustang, just because you grow up from elementary school to junior high to high school, so you build those relationships, and that's why I think Oakdale is such a strong, like, athletic program, because you mesh with all the guys, you've grown up with them.
We had a dominant year, going undefeated in league, led by the offense and pitching of Andy Morris. But despite Andy's outstanding performance on the field, his emotions were still getting the better of him at times, which led to a confrontation between him and Coach Arpoca.
I'll be honest, I played with a lot of emotion, a lot of fire. I hated to lose, and that's honestly, you know, that's what drove me. I did not want to lose. I personally owe my senior season to Coach Arpoca. I was down on myself, I wasn't producing, and he pulled me aside twice and straightened my act out really quick.
Andy responded the right way, going out against our rivals at the time, East Union, and having the best game of his life. We had barely beaten them in extras 2 days before, and now a home game on Friday. The game had brought in quite a crowd to see how the second game would turn out. Andy was pitching that game and had 12 strikeouts through 7 innings, entering the bottom of the 7th with the score tied 2-2. I was on deck when Andy walked to the plate with that same swagger he had when he was a kid on the Colts. He dug in, gripped his bat like he always did, and stared down the pitcher. The count was 2 balls and 1 strike, and the next pitch was a curveball down and in, Andy's sweet spot.
There you go, Carl. That's it. Game over.
It was without a doubt the best game I'd ever seen by any player, and a dramatic walk-off win if there ever was one. To this day, Andy claims Coach Mark was with him in the box that day.
Andy Morris was a very passionate player. He wore his heart on his sleeve, and watching him grow up and learn how to manage himself and compose himself, especially, you know, down the stretch there as a senior. He was always one of those clutch guys. Seemed to rise to the occasion when duty called.
We beat River City to advance to the semifinals against Vista del Lago from Folsom, beating them in a back-and-forth 3-game series. We advanced to the section final game and found ourselves playing our rivals for over 100 years, the Sonora Wildcats, a tough competitor in our league. It would be the last time we would ever play with Andy Morris and Mark Ortiz. Their journey with us would come to an end after this night.
It was just a crazy game because we've played them 2 or 3 times already in the season.
I remember all the emotion in that game. I remember especially through Andy Morris. He was playing shortstop, he caught a pop fly, he looked at the Sonora bench and the crowd and screamed as loud as he can on top of his lungs and showed him that he's for real and this is his game to win.
We were ahead the whole game, and after a home run by Spencer Thomas late in the game, we knew the game was in our hands. It was the perfect ending to Andy Morris's career wearing red and gold. From Colt to Mustang, Andy went out a section title champion, a leader, and an example of how the game ought to be played. He not only received the MVP award on our team, he was named the most valuable player in the league. Mark Ortiz was selected Defensive Player of the Year for our team and was awarded First Team All-League honors, with Spencer Thomas being awarded the best hitter on the team and getting First Team All-League for outfield. I have no doubt my dad was looking on smiling. With Andy and Mark graduated, only myself, Nick Garza, Eddie Machado, and Spencer Thomas remained for our senior year. But, as fate would have it, that was soon about to change. Nick Ippolito, one of the original 6, decided to try to transfer again to Oakdale High for our senior year. And right before senior year started, Nick's parents and him tried for the inter-district transfer, and this time, the transfer went through.
Knowing that I could play baseball with the Oakdale Colts one last time, I was just so excited. I couldn't believe that I got the okay to transfer. It was like coming home.
When Nick came back, I honestly thought it was pretty surreal.
I mean, when we hear this, you say, oh my God, like the best shortstop's coming to Oakdale. I mean, and not only was he really good at baseball, but he was also one of our brothers.
You could see how much love his teammates had for him and how much they missed having him on the field with him.
We also found out our senior year would be Coach Hondo Arpoca's last year coaching baseball. Seeing we all respected the man tremendously, it would only be right if we sent him off with another winning season.
Arpoca he was quiet but calm and collected.
Highly respected, loved the game, never yelled, never argued.
Coach Arpoca was a molder of men. He coached in a style that kind of reflected his character. He expected us to be both men on the field and off the field.
Yeah, he was always trying to learn. He always learned to get better. And I think as a player, watching your coach learn and try to get better, it made you want to learn and get better.
So with Nick Ippolito's return, we were excited to get the season on the road. Unfortunately, before winter conditioning started, Spencer Thomas decided to stop playing baseball in order to focus on football, leaving myself, Nick Garza, Eddie, and Nick Ippolito as the remaining Colts. I was holding down first base still, with Nick Garza behind the dish starting, Nick Ippolito at short, and Eddie in center field, and also sharing time as one of our 2 starters on the mound. Preseason started off rough, winning only 5 out of our 9 games, which was not how it was supposed to be at Oakdale.
As far as expectations, again, we expected to win a section title.
There's a lot of pressure to win because they expect us to win section titles year after year.
We started off league with a 2-game series against East Union, splitting with them. Again, we weren't supposed to lose games like this. The coaches were getting anxious, and in turn, friction started to build between us and them.
Our last season was a roller coaster. There was a lot of friction between the coaches and the players, the coaches and the coaches.
Our coaching staff wanted us to be not ourselves, basically. We were not very rah-rah guys. We didn't like yelling at people. We just liked watching the game, knowing the situation, and performing.
The coaches, they primarily looked towards me and Erickson to like step up and be leaders. And we kind of had a hard time doing that. We aren't really those outspoken guys that like to step up like that. We were kind of the guys that led by example.
We bounced back, beating Kimball twice, then Western Ranch in both games, but then faced off against Sierra. We managed to barely win the first game, but fell short the second game in a 3-2 loss.
We were playing Sierra at Sierra, and we had a terrible game. And it was kind of at that point, I feel like me and Erickson and maybe some of the other guys kind of stepped up.
When things got going tough, some of you had to step out of your shells, and that wasn't easy. So we faced some adversity doing that.
A spark was lit under us, and we finally started coming together as a team. Eddie's pitching was superb on the mound, and his development was astounding to watch.
He attacked hitters. You could see the confidence level had changed for him, and he was exciting to watch as a senior.
Nick Ippolito looked flawless at shortstop. He looked exactly as he did when he was on the Colts, smooth, aggressive, and consistent.
You could see passion for the game with him on the field. The backflips coming out of the dugout. He added a little life on the field for us.
Nick Garza stepped up as our starting catcher and a vocal leader on the team. That no-nonsense, gritty mindset hadn't parted with him.
He's very quiet, reserved, very internalized player, but a tireless worker, a grinder. He did an unbelievable job as a senior, leading from behind the plate and keeping guys composed during those big games.
As for myself, I was having the best offensive year of my life, batting .500 up to this point in season with 5 home runs. Then we played Manteca, the games that would make or break us.
We're scuffling, and then we faced Corn from Manteca. I think Manteca was right behind us in the standings, so this was a big game. And we ended up beating him, which I think was a turning point in our season.
We regained the momentum and easily beat our rivals, the Sonora Wildcats, in the series after.
As the season wore on, the cream rose to the top. You know, you guys got better and better as the season and played your best ball at the end, and that's where you have to be.
Making it to playoffs that season was a huge accomplishment for us. Our first game we played Consumas Oaks. Eddie Machado came out in an electrifying manner on the mound, dealing all 7 innings, throwing a no-hitter. We won 3-0 and went on to face Vista Del Lago in the semifinals. We won the first game against Vista, but lost the second game 7-6 in extra innings, forcing a final winner-take-all game between us to see who would advance to the championship game. And boy, did we show up that game. Our bats were too hot for Vista to handle, and with an 11-0 win, we headed to the championship game. 10 years ago, my dad started the Colts in hopes of developing us into players ready to one day be led by Hondo Arpoca, and now we were under his coaching, by his side for his last hurrah. Now it all came down to this: one night, one final game together. To make matters more suspenseful, we were going up against the athletically acclaimed private school out of Modesto, Central Catholic.
Central Catholic and Oakdale kind of have this debate on who was better, and so we had this hidden rivalry. And so this championship game was kind of the first time we'd been playing.
It was a country school versus a preppy private school.
We got all our guys from just Oakdale, and Central Catholic would get their players from all over.
2 schools, well represented, a ton of history between them. To be in that environment, what I think you try to get you guys to just be able to soak it up.
So the build up to this game was remarkable. Fans were coming all over the place. There was not an empty seat.
The game was held on May 27, 2013. Central had their big dude on the mound, Matt Palazzo, who during season was 6-1 with a 1.55 ERA and 99 strikeouts to his name.
He reminded us Colts as Trey Ridenauer, just like in the Belpassi game. It was like a remake of the Sanctions game. Looking around at the positions, I saw Erickson at first, Nick was catching, and then Eddie pitching. And I'm at short, and I look around and I see the Oakdale Colts back for their last game.
The game was the definition of a pitcher's duel. Eddie was throwing another stellar game, but his performance was being matched by Matt Palazzo, who by the 3rd inning already had 5 strikeouts and hadn't given up a hit.
Matt Palazzo was shoving, and we could not touch him.
Palazzo, he was pretty much like Goliath, and we were David. And it seemed like the story was going to change this time, and Goliath was going to end up winning.
I mean, it was ecstatic. It was a great game. It was 0-0. You know, just waiting for somebody to budge just a little bit.
Defensively, our guys were composed, and you could see those were traits that they had grown up with. You know, they'd been in pressure situations before. There was no panic on the field. There was a lot of composure.
In the top of the 6th, Eddie beamed their leadoff batter, putting a runner on first. Then a fielder's choice allowed us to collect 1 out. The 3rd batter up hit a fly ball to center field for our 2nd out. But then the next batter came up and hammered a ball my direction.
Pitch is swung on, grounded to first, over the first baseman, around 3rd. Comes a runner, he's going home, he's gonna have to slide it through the hands of the catcher who walked the plate, but he'll score anyway.
Eddie was taken out of the game after this and replaced by junior Bryce Dierda. Bryce struck out the last batter for the 3rd out, and into the bottom of the 6th we went, down by 1.
Coach Arpoca came running through the dugout and trying to inspire us. Let's go do it, you know, let's go. And he had a smile on his face, and it really showed us all like to just relax and go out there and have fun and find a way to win.
So looking for their first base hit of the day. The 2-2 is swung on and missed. Got him back, and that brings up Erickson Dickens.
And that's how we have to do it, you guys. That's the most important thing, learning how to come back, right?
Dickens do the same thing here. It's a 2-2 count with 1 out in the inning. Delivery is swung on and hit to left field. That's going to drop in for a base hit just over the shortstop. Dickens is on board here with 1 out, in the inning.
It started with Erickson, getting his base hit and getting on bag.
I was so pumped I hit my head on the dugout. After Erickson, Eddie comes up. First pitch fastball flies out to center. Now Garza comes up and he draws a walk.
With runners on first and second, Bryce Dearda stepped up to the plate and hit a line drive back up the middle, scoring a run, tying the game.
2 outs. Now Colt comes up. Colt gets beamed in the head, bases loaded, and Miko comes up. He worked the count, drew the walk, we go ahead.
With the score 2-1 in our favor, Coach Arpoca decided to call on a pinch hitter, my cousin Austin Dickens.
Call here by Coach Arpoca to bring in Austin Dickens. He fires that one back up first pitch swinging, grounding to second, it's ball, but everyone is safe. Run scores, 2 runs will score, they're both safe at home. And Oakdale have blown this game open now. It's 4-1 here in the bottom of the 6th.
We stayed composed and went out onto the field to close it out in the top of the 7th.
Here it is. The 2-2 is in there for strike 3. Oakdale have won 4 consecutive Division IV titles in 6 in 7 years. And Bryce Dearda finishes off.
The first thing I see is Arpoca flying out to the middle.
We felt like it was a perfect end to his coaching. And also, I feel like we kind of finished our story as Oakdale Colts.
So it was kind of like a flashback, if you will, as a lot of the Colts were playing on that Mustang team against Central. Back in the day, we would always be down in the beginning and always find a way to come back and win.
It was great closure. I don't know in what kind of words I can say what I felt in my heart at that time.
Coach Mark was looking down on us, and I feel like he had a smile on his face because we finished our story and we did it for him.
And just to see us finish it off, it was just a thrill. And at the end, raising the banner and having all the kids together and taking a picture. I think Spencer and Robbie and everybody were together.
The Colts set a dream, and it's a long time coming. That's what's kind of special about you guys and your dad starting the Colts. He started that dream for you at a young age. What an ending to a story. It's a Cinderella story, and you guys did it. You made it happen.
Like Andy Morris before me, I received MVP of the league that year and First Team All-League honors. Eddie Machado received First Team All-League for pitching and defense. Nick Garza was awarded Second Team All-League for catching, as well as the Team Captain Award, and Nick Ippolito received First Team All-League at shortstop. I feel like these awards alone are a testament of one man's dedication to us.
In the city of Oakdale, if you look around now, if you follow the local papers at all, the Oakdale Leader just this last week had a picture of 4 travel teams that had just won tournaments. But those teams, they're Oakdale Colts. They were all, teams put together that people saw what we did many years ago.
Watching the kids grow, I think that's the main thing. Growing from a young kid, just watching them play, watching them work hard during the practice, and then afterward, just having the best time of their lives playing with their buddies.
Watching the kids now and then them actually talking about the Colts, asking questions to us about Mark, about the different occasions that we had, different tournaments. To me, I think we kind of started that, but they're kind of finishing it.
When I have children, I would talk about the Colts a lot. I'd tell them how much it made me who I was today, how much it molded me into the man I am, how much I learned about baseball and life.
The whole Colt experience and the coaches have impacted my life through many of the values that I've learned. Hard work was drilled into us from the very beginning, trying to be the best that we could be.
Being a Colt it made me who I am today. I miss the times where, you know, we'd have 4-hour practice out at Valley Home. I miss the games that we would have to travel to. I miss just being around the guys.
Growing up as a Colt, to me, was the best time of my life. I got to play with my best friends growing up. They're like family. I was around them all the time. I got to play baseball with a family is what it felt like.
Exactly what I took away from it, what we as kids took away from it, and what it did for us as, you know, young kids, and then eventually developing into young adults. I think it helped shape us into, you know, what we've become.
It taught me how to live and to enjoy every moment and take it in. Because looking back at it now, those memories were the best, and I would do it again if I was able to.
I truly, truly miss those years. I miss seeing the families. I miss seeing the kids all the time. I miss the fun activities, the just everything about it. If I could turn back time in a flash, I would.
Our boys were free to enjoy the game, and he created an atmosphere for our boys to shine, to not worry about making mistakes.
A lot of the things we're saying don't just happen, it comes together because it comes from the top. I really honestly believe, being around all these tournaments for a lot of years, that other teams envied what Mark had done with the boys.
Mark left a legacy of great ball players. They were his players. I always felt overwhelmingly blessed to be part of that red team. The way they carried themselves, the boys and the coaches, class act. Absolutely a class act. Mark was so worried and sad about the possible reality that he would not be able to watch Erickson and Soren grow up. And in heaven, he now has the best seat in the house because he can see every move they make,